The hardest part about a video is actually figuring out what I need to wear before I start the video. The deliberation for today was this G-Shock. Pretty nice, pretty sweet. I think they call that the Cassie Oak, something like that. Or the yellow one. See, the yellow one is pretty cool because it's Bluetooth, connects to my phone and does cool things that I never use. But the clear one is newer and I'm just excited about this one. So yeah, we're gonna go with the clear one for today. Enough about watches and things that have nothing to do with today's video. Today, you guys asked for it. I'm gonna make a video about GoPro stuff. Something I use to record all of my race footage, and by the name of the title of this video, I am going to show you today how I set this thing up and then a couple things I do to the footage in post so that the footage is just a little bit nicer, easier to see and all that stuff. But seriously though, the clear one or the yellow one? I like them both. So the first thing I want to start off with is my list of suggestions of items that you will need to accompany your GoPro adventure here. I'm going to go ahead and link all of these down below for reference, but I will run through them just so that you can see what we're working with today. So GoPro Hero 8 is what I have. I know this is not the most current version. I think that there's a GoPro Hero 9, perhaps something even more current at the time you're watching this. But I want to say that if you have an older GoPro, it probably won't work as well as this one for one fundamental reason. And that's because GoPro did a significant upgrade, change, software thing that is only available on this one and models newer for their hyper smooth, whatever technology they call it. That's what's going to make this so usable to get rid of jitters and shakes and stuff like that, and the footage is going to be very watchable. GoPro Hero 8, the way that I'm going to mount this on my hat is with a hat clip. This thing is pretty straightforward. It's just a little clip, and then I wear like a snapback style hat. I flip it around with the strap on my forehead, and then I just clip this right in. And for those that want to be super cool, you can get one of these little red aluminum knobs, because that's going to be way faster than the plastic black ones for sure. So the way that you mount this is pretty simple. You're going to want the GoPro to point away from the hat. So you mount it up like this. And then if you take a hat, clip it on like so. And that's your setup right there. Okay. Additional accessories that I would suggest getting with this, I would suggest having a few extra batteries. You can get this little battery charger bank deal here. So that way I have no less than 3 GoPro batteries on any given race weekend. So I always have plenty of Go juice should I need it. The other thing that you're going to need is obviously going to be an SD card. I would recommend you get one that is actually bigger than this. This is the only one I had laying around. I usually use a 128 gig card because that will give me, with the settings that we use, just shy of 2 hours of runtime. So if you have some nitro mains or other mains like that, you're definitely going to want the runtime to be able to shoot additional footage and not run out of space. GoPro, hat clip, extra batteries, and a bigger SD card than that, and you're going to have everything that you need for the GoPro setup, physically speaking. Now, let's jump into the settings that I use for this GoPro and see what I do there. Okay, so there's a few settings in here that are definitely going to be necessary when we're going to consider the things we will do with the footage after. If you just want to use the GoPro, not do anything to it in post, you can probably just fire it up and use it in a default setting and you'll be okay. But let's look at a couple of the things that I make sure are set up correctly so that I could do some stuff with it after. So we go into the shooting mode, and we're going to want to make sure that we're shooting in 4K. When we shoot in 4K, this is going to give us a good bit of resolution to play with after, because you're going to see what I'm going to do to the footage here in a second. Now, I'm all about that cinematic life, and I shoot pretty much everything in 24 frames per second. This is also good because this means that it's going to require less space. So to quickly explain this, there's going to be 24 frames of information for every second versus if I was shooting at a higher frame rate, say double that, like 60 frames per second. So the same 30-second clip, if I shot it at 60 frames per second, it's going to require twice as much storage just for the same clip. Now, you have to think about this footage. What are you going to do with it later? And the answer to myself is I never slow this footage down or do anything other than view it at its normal recording speed. 24 frames per second gives me that juicy cinematic vibe and saves me some information. 4K, we're good to go. So now the lens that I particularly choose, this is kind of funny because it's the same lens, same sensor. We're not really manipulating anything in an actual sense. This is all just a digital manipulation, cropping and whatnot. So you can punch in and get really tight if you want to, or you can do what I do. I just put it in the middle setting. I leave it on wide. If for some reason you feel like you need the maximum focal range, you can definitely go with the super view, but this to me is just so wide, it's really not necessary because I'm already going to be punching this image in later or zooming in even more than what we have here. But basically what I'm trying to do is capture the highest unaltered resolution I possibly can natively in the GoPro before I crop in and post and lose a bunch of detail and whatnot. So that's going to be good for the lens setting there. I definitely turn on the stabilization, but I only turn it on to the first value. So the bottom would be no hyper smooth 2.0 at all. The first says that there's a 10% crop. So I'm already losing 10% of the frame information when I start to use the stabilization, because it's going to take it and instead of it moving around like this, it's going to make it smooth and it's going to delete some of the information in trade-off for it being smooth. This thing is just on top of your head. It's really not going to be, shaking around like it was on the front of an off-road dirt vehicle or anything like that. So we definitely don't need to delete or crop a ton of the information inside the camera. But I do leave it on just a little bit in the off chance that I am going to move around just a little bit on the driver's stand. So it'll help us smooth it out just a little bit. Okay, so 4K at 24 frames. The lens is in the middle position or the wide position, and then we have the hyper smooth turned on to a low setting. There's one more setting in here that I thought was kind of cool that I don't know if the older GoPro models have it or not, but it's going to be a bitrate adjustment. This is something that we use in the film industry or video industry that basically the higher the bit rate, the more information you're gathering. And sometimes this can translate into a better image or more image detail. So right here where it says bit rate, you can turn that up to where I have it, which is high. I believe that the default setting for most GoPros is going to be standard, but sliding this up to high says use higher bit rate up to 100 megabits for 4K and 2.7K resolutions for optimal image quality. So definitely want to enable that because I am looking for the highest image quality possible before I start taking information away in post. All these other settings in here, I believe, were just defaulted from the manufacturer and I have not touched them or done anything different with them. So you can see what they are here, but those are going to be my settings that I use. 24 frames per second, 4K, wide lens range, high bitrate enabled. Everything else, I believe, is pretty much the way that it comes default, and you're good to go. Those are all my GoPro settings that I use to record my races. I had a missed call.
Yo.
Yo,
What up?
dude, you're on YouTube. You have to say hi real quick.
I'm on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm recording a video right now.
Oh, hi. Well, what's going on, peoples?
It's been a minute since you
Yeah,
guys have seen AJ, but he's just off doing what, drag race things?
you're doing drag racing stuff. Yeah, it's been a blast.
Oh, should I have worn the yellow watch or the clear watch?
What?
Just answer the question. Should I have worn the yellow watch or the clear watch?
I mean, clear. You can have grow out clear because then it's any color you want to be.
Good choice. Good choice.
That's a smart answer. Yes.
Nice. Good. You win. Okay. Just had to catch up with AJ. Haven't talked to him in a minute. So he's doing good. Now, let's take our GoPro footage and load it up into the old computer machine here, and let's show you what I do next. Sorry, I feel like I need to explain something before I continue on. I use Adobe Premiere Pro. This is not a free program. So if this upsets some of you, I'm sorry. But it shouldn't come at a surprise because you guys know that I kind of make videos and it's what I do. So I'm going to try to explain this in generic terms as far as the things that I'm doing, so that if you find free video editing software, maybe you can apply the generic term or the setting that I'm adjusting and then try and work about it that way. So I apologize, but I don't at the same time. So we've started a new project. We have imported our footage into Adobe Premiere. So I'm going to go ahead and drag it onto our timeline and go ahead and start our sequence. Now within Adobe Premiere Pro, there's a lot of different things that I can do to this footage, but I'm going to show you the main things that I adjust to at least increase the viewability, if that's a word, of this particular clip. So here we can see that it is obviously a pretty wide perspective because we haven't touched it yet. It's super wide. We're seeing kind of guys on the driver's stand. The cars look a little bit smaller on the track. So let's do some stuff to it to make it a little bit easier to see. So I went ahead and skipped ahead to this point here because this is kind of a good-ish place to start. So we're going to jump over here to the editing tab. Before we do anything, we can see that the image is very zoomed out. All the cars look really small. It's kind of hard to see them. So the first thing that we're going to look at doing is just zooming in a little bit. So depending on the software that you're using or the editing program, scaling the image is probably what this is going to be called. So I usually zoom in to about 225%. That's like kind of my generic starting point, and that kind of gives me a not too zoomed in, still wide enough that it looks kind of natural point. Now, however, you can see that I zoomed in to the very center point of the image, and now my car is at the top of the image, and it's not very good at all. However, have no fear. Simple adjustment of repositioning everything because we zoomed in. Now I can put the car in the center of the screen. What you're going to want to do is watch the race for about a minute or so and see where your head is going to rest through the majority of the race. Because me particularly, I know that my head position may change, at the very beginning and then be the same for the rest of the race. So it's important to kind of watch it through once, see where you're at, and then make this adjustment. Next, we can see that the image is a little bit crooked. So because it's zoomed in, I have plenty of material to work with here. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of a rotation, and then as simple as that, now we can see everything looks pretty flat, pretty level. So I'm going to go ahead and press play and see how this looks and see if there's any adjustments I need to make. So we can see here that the car kind of dips below to the very bottom edge of the screen. And that's a corner that's the closest to me. My head is going to be positioned, pointed very downward to make that work. So we can position it a little bit higher So the car's showing completely at the bottom part of that screen. And let's see how that looks for the remainder of the lap.
And there they go, coming down the back. Orange, green, red. This is the way you're coming through. Oh, somebody was right on, man. Really lost a bunch of spots there. And there goes Ryan out by himself. Mason now up into that number 2 spot. Lula now coming over the last set of rows now.
So I'd say that that's pretty close. I know that my head on this particular clip moves around just a little bit, so there's going to be, some wiggle around there. But that's about it. I just play with the scaling aspect to zoom the image in and out, and then if I need to move it up or down or side to side, you can do that with the positioning aspects of the editing software. And then if your image is a little bit crooked, have no fear, because I know that I'm going to be zooming in and I can rotate it that few degrees to level it back out. And that's all that I do as far as positioning the image. If you really want to go for extra credit and you want to make it extra cool, you can jump over to the coloring aspect of Adobe Premiere, and then you can play with some of the basic correction of the image. So if you wanted to bump the exposure a little bit, if it was a little dark, you could do, a little bit of adjustment there. You could add a little bit of contrast to make it super nice. Let's see, if the highlights were a little bit too blown out, you could drag those down a little bit. Shadows, bump those up. This is all pretty standard kind of colorization or just exposure light balance correction that I do to pretty much every clip that you guys see. If you want to make the colors a little bit punchier, you can boost the saturation just a little bit. Nothing too crazy. I don't like to go for too much exaggeration there. And then if you want to compensate for the graininess that you now see because you've zoomed the image in and you've lost some resolution, you can kind of combat that a little bit by adding a little bit of sharpness. I would say like a value of 15 is going to be enough. When you start to go a whole lot past that, it starts to look really chunky and just kind of weird, doesn't really look that good. But all in all, that's about all the correction that I'll do to my GoPro footage when it comes to making it look better for you guys to watch all of my race recaps, heats and mains and whatnot. So then once you had all your adjustments done there, you would just go up to File, Export, Export Media, select a file name, location, all the other stuff that's going to be appropriate. I usually leave the default settings as to match the source, and then I just let it rip, hit export, and away you go. Depending on the computer you have, this may take a long time. It may take just a few minutes. This is kind of where that horsepower aspect of a computer can come into play. So if you have an older computer and you're really struggling, this may take a while. If you've got something a little bit more current, faster processor, video card, RAM, all that jazz, it may not take that long and you should be just fine. Hey guys, before I wrap this video up, I needed to give a huge shout out and thank you to everyone that jumped on to my Patreon. I have a couple different options on there. I have a $5 support option, a $10 option, and just a few spots of a $50 option. In my last video where I talked about this, my Patreon is only there as an opportunity for you guys to contribute to what we do here on the channel. I'm not trying to keep top secret information behind a paywall. It's just an opportunity for you guys to be a part of what's going on here. And I just wanted to give you an update as to what we are working on currently. We're trying to do a traveling workshop. I'm really excited about this. It's kind of blending and marrying to another piece that I've kind of had and never really put together properly. But after meeting recently with a designer, I'm really excited to get this stuff in motion. How soon will you be able to see things and class dates and all that stuff? Just please be patient. I like to get things kind of set, ready before we pull the trigger kind of situation. So as soon as things come, I will definitely give you guys an update as soon as I possibly can. Probably about a month or so before we're going to see kind of the initial framework of this thing once things are ready, but it's coming. So for those of you on my $10 Patreon tier list, I'll go ahead and throw all of your wonderful names up here on the screen. Thank you guys so much. I never expected this to immediately receive so much support. So you guys are all seriously awesome. And then I have a spot as my kind of the highest level of support you could do on the channel. And as a way of thank you, I will give you a shout out in each and every video that you are a patron supporter. So at the current moment, this hallowed reservation belongs to Alex Johnson. So thank you, sir. I greatly appreciate your support, and I could not do all these things that we are going to do in the future without you guys. Thank you. So back to the GoPro stuff. There you go. That's everything that I do to get my GoPro footage recorded and then make it look really cool. So if you guys had any questions about that, you know what to do. Drop it down in a comment below. If you have any interest in being a new Patreon supporter, that link is down below as well. Definitely not necessary. Not trying to keep any top secret information there. It's just an opportunity for you guys to contribute to the general thing we got going on here in the channel. So if you want to, great. If you don't, that's okay. Just like, comment, subscribe, and always, and I will keep on keeping on. So that's going to be it for this one, guys. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next video. That was cheesy. Peace.